Welcome to Soccer in 60, presented by the Empire Strykers. Get ready for your weekly look at all the pro soccer teams in Greater Los Angeles. We've got all the news and analysis you need, from LAFC and the LA Galaxy to the Empire Strykers, Angel City FC, and Orange County Soccer Club. Now, buckle up and enjoy Soccer in 60.
Welcome to the fastest paced soccer podcast in SoCal. This is Soccer in 60, brought to you by SAC Health System, covering all the week's news, highlights, and more from LAFC, the Galaxy, Angel City FC, Orange County Soccer Club, and the Major Arena Soccer League's very own Empire Strykers. Hello and welcome. I'm JR Liebert, affectionately known as your friendly neighborhood scarf. And it is so good to be back alongside my co-host and soccer superfan, Timmy K. Tim Kolach. Tim, how are you, my man?
I am doing well, Scarf, today, buddy. You know, it's been a good week in LA. Couple of good things, couple of injuries and things like that that we can talk about. But we're gonna get after it tonight. We're gonna talk a little El Tráfico that's coming up this weekend. We've got a great guest on. We'll give the introduction for our great guest here in a minute. We've got some great Angel City news, and it's going to be a good show, my buddy Scarf.
Yeah, guest. Practically a co-host this week. LA Times' very own Kevin Baxter. He's agreed to talk with us about Angel City, LAFC, and the Galaxy because, of course, it is El Tráfico week. The battle for Los Angeles is on Saturday at BMO Stadium. But you mentioned it. We are going to talk a little bit of Angel City first. And then don't forget, we'll also talk some Empire Strykers, Orange County Soccer Club, and then our favorite segment, a heated segment that Tim might not be as heated about this week because we'll talk about why later, but Best 11, where we look at the best players across soccer in the Southland. But yeah, it's been an up and down roller coaster of a week for sure. But something, by the way, that is never up and down is our friends over at Omnitrans. A quick word from our friends over at Omnitrans. In partnership with the Empire Strykers, experience the thrill of game day with Omnitrans. Be in the heart of the action at Toyota Arena and let Omnitrans take care of the ride. Simply download the Transit app to catch your bus and enjoy a stress-free trip to cheer on the Empire Strykers. Don't miss out on the excitement and make every moment count at Toyota Arena. Ride with Omnitrans to your next Empire Strykers game. I am so excited, Tim, because again, joining us now, he doesn't just cover soccer for the Los Angeles Times. He blankets the Southland with his coverage. Of course, this is one of the foremost experts on Angel City, LAFC, and the Galaxy, Mr. Kevin Baxter. Kevin, welcome to Soccer in 60, my friend.
Thanks for having me. You guys, I know we're going to talk about El Tráfico in a bit. I'm just going to give you a little prelude to that. I'm so over El Tráfico, and I'll tell you why. It is not what it used to be. And Tim, you said great Angel City news. Could you fill me in? Because I'm looking at Angel City, and I don't see a lot of great news, although you did say you're going to have the best 11. I'm assuming that's a co-ed best 11, and Riley Tiernan should probably be on there since she's second in Southern California in goals.
Yeah, listen, we've talked an awful lot about Riley Tiernan on this show for sure. Look, Angel City currently in the midst of a 6 week or so long break. Their next match not slated until August 1st against Seattle Reign. They've taken just 1 point from their last 5 matches and half the NWSL season in the books, Kevin. They sit 11th out of 14 teams in the table. So when we had you on late last year, you said Angel City was a mess. When we had you on a few months later, you said they were less of a mess. On the Kevin Baxter scale, how much of a mess are they now?
They're still a mess. They have a chance to get unmessy. I will tell you that, they're going to miss the entire month of July, not a game in July. Last game was June 20th. They're taking time off because of the Women's Euros. And when they took time off last season for the Olympic tournament, I was at that event where the commissioner announced that. And I went up and congratulated her. And I said, this is a great idea. MLS doesn't do that. They play through the Gold Cup, and it's kind of a mess. I mean, the World Cup and the Euros obviously don't really affect them like the Gold Cup does. And they MLS, as plays to the World Cup, and a lot of the best teams lose their best players. Their best player, they have good players on the national team because they're the best players they have. So anyway, when she did this, I congratulated her on the Olympics. I think this is too long. This is 6 weeks. This is really too long of a break. I think fans kind of lose their rhythm. The players definitely, this can, however, when you talk about Angel City being a mess, and we'll get to that in a second, the break could actually help them maybe more than any other teams. They're 4-6-3. They're 3 points out of a playoff berth, as you mentioned, halfway through the season. They are winless in their last 5, 0-4-1, haven't won since May 9th. They're winless under Alexander Strauss, their new coach. They're 0-1 with him. This is why I think that maybe they benefit from this break more than anyone else, because Alexander Strauss certainly was watching the team when he was still in Germany, but he had his own team to coach. So he's getting used to the players now. He's had a long break. Everybody is there for the most part. I know Alyssa Thompson's been out and Angelina Anderson's been out with the national team, but for the most part, they've been there for most of those 6 weeks. He's got to see them. He's got to know what makes them tick. He's got to learn a little bit about them. He's got to maybe teach them the way that he wants to play. And so this 6 week break, this is like a new preseason with the new coach, and they're going to come back and they're going to have a run, 13 games. The problem I think right now is the offense. You talk about Riley Tiernan, 7 goals. Alyssa Thompson has 5 goals. There's only 2 other players with more than 1. So it's really, 2 players to scoring all the goals. If you're an opposing team and you can take, one of those 2 out of it, you've really done a good job. It's very hard to take Alyssa Thompson or Riley Tiernan out of a game, but if you can, it makes it much easier. You don't have a lot of people to worry about. Sydney Leroux signed a 3-year contract last fall, hasn't played at all. I don't even know if she's training. June Endo could be back when the season starts up again. Ali Riley, I know she's training again. I don't know how close she is. June Endo would be a good addition, but there's one other thing. When you talk about Angel City and the way it's kind of like LAFC, the way it's developed this community, become part of the community, developed this fan base. The last game they had at home was a Saturday night against North Carolina, a Saturday night, not a weeknight, a Saturday night, 14,933, the lowest attendance in franchise history.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
You mentioned their record in the last 3 matches, of course, with Alex Strauss. But let me ask you, soccer in the United States can be pretty different than coaching over at Bayern, right? You've got the travel, you've got all the things that you maybe underestimate when you coach in the United States. How much of a role do you feel like maybe that played for Strauss early on? And do you see anything else that might have been especially challenging for him starting out?
Well, he showed up here, I think on June 1st was the first day he was allowed to be here, and they had a game on the 7th. So he had to get, up to speed pretty quickly. I think he's still learning his players. If, when we talk about going from MLS to Europe or from Europe to MLS, it's totally different than what you have in the NWSL. Bayern Munich is a big team. They play in the Women's Bundesliga, but with the exception of a few teams maybe in Spain and France, you really can't compare NWSL to some of the things going on in Europe. I know the WPS is getting, Women's Professional League in England is getting better, but the resources here, the attention in NWSL, if you're a good coach, I think this is where you want to be. But you do mention there's the travel. As far as I know right now, unless, correct me, Tim, if I'm wrong, but they're still traveling, coach, and they're traveling 6 hours to some games. In Germany, I'm sure all the travel was by train. And if you've ever traveled in Germany by train, it is pretty awesome. I'd much rather go, from Munich to Berlin by train than go from LA to Seattle by plane. So there are some things that he has to get used to. Fortunately for him, he's getting used to it. His players already know that.
Yeah. And what I was mentioning earlier, we talked about the travel and things like this, but the Angel City is a very young team, and they've added a couple of really younger attackers, right? You've got an attacker in Sven John's daughter. And also they just signed during the break, a 20-year-old out of the U.S. under-23 team midfielder, Evelyn Shores. So with that incredibly young team, and now these people, a lot of them have played college and in Europe and things like that. But how is that lack of experience basically going to help these guys? And like you said earlier, will this break really, truly help these younger players?
Well, it depends on if Alexander Strauss can get them to play together. You look at Kennedy Fuller too. She has two goals. She's another young player. They do have a lot of young players. And Riley Tiernan she's right out of college, and I love the way she plays. She's playing with a chip on her shoulder. I talked to her early in the season, and I was like, they didn't have a draft, so it was up to teams to call you. You had a great season in college at Rutgers. Nobody called you. One other team offered her, a tryout. That was Gotham. She didn't want to stay, in the area, so she came out here. She said that every time she looks at another team's jersey, she wants to prove them wrong for not giving her a call. So, hopefully for Angel City, that motivation will continue. But, a new coach, new players, I don't think it's as bad as it would be if, say, you were going into an established team with a third or fourth year coach and maybe a core that had been there for a while. Everybody's trying to get to know each other. It's a great time to add these players. It's a great time to build going forward. What they really need to know now is to get some of that veteran leadership. Christian Press has really adopted that role as a mentor, and some other players in there have really adopted these roles. Katie Zellum is another one, a veteran, played in England for a long time, captain at Manchester United. So some of these women have developed this leadership mantle, and they're going to need that to bring these young players along, not just for Angel City, but those players are going to go on. And as you said, they're playing on the national team already. Some of them, they're going to go on and develop. And this is a great opportunity for some of these veteran Angel City players to have an impact.
Yeah, Kevin, it's going to be interesting to see what version of this Angel City club comes out of this long break. You're absolutely right. Before we talk LAFC, let's get to
By the way, let me add one more thing on Angel City.
Absolutely.
I saw June Endo, and if people forget, June Endo was a very versatile player, very colorful player, very creative player. I really like the way she plays. But if you remember June Endo when she was last on the field last February a year ago, when she got hurt, it was in preseason. She was a small, slight player, fast, did a lot of other things, but she was very slight. She's been in the weight room. Boy, has she been in the weight room. She is bulked up. I don't know if she's lost any speed. We'll have to see that. But if she can come back and be as fast and as creative as she was before with that size, where she's going to be able to get into the middle and kind of bump people around a little bit, she could be a real second half game changer for Angel City.
Yeah, and you mentioned the attendance. She also puts butts in the seats, too. They love June Endo there at BMO Stadium. Before we talk LAFC, let's get to our good friends over at National Core. National Core is one of the nation's largest nonprofit affordable housing developers and a proud sponsor of your MASL team, the Empire Strikers. At National Core, they believe that soccer has the power to transform lives just like they do. They believe in building strong communities on and off the field. And to learn more about National Core and their mission, go to nationalcore.org. All right, we're talking El Tráfico a little bit later. Let's talk more just LAFC right now. They reel off their third straight win of July, all in shutout fashion. But this was their first real signature win since before playing in the Club World Cup. This was a 1-0 grinded out win over the best set piece team in the league in the second place Minnesota United. No Captain Aaron Long for the rest of the season. Denis misses two massive chances at the end of that match to put it away. Dane St. Clair looked amazing, and yet the black and gold are able to come out with a win, and all of this fresh off a win over a lackluster, kind of unmotivated Dallas club, 2-0 last weekend. Lucho Acosta really looks like he wants out of there, and you almost had all three frontline players scoring for 2 matches in a row in Dilrosun, Ordaz, and Denis Bouanga. But let me ask you about tonight first, Kevin. How much of that match against Minnesota did you see, and what stood out for you most in this match?
Well, I was really interested to see what would happen without Aaron Long. He's not only their captain, he's their best defender by far. He's their leader on the field. He's everything you want from a player, and now he's not there. And so he leaves so many holes. Who's going to wear the armband? That might be the easiest decision of all. Who's going to take his place? Who's going to be the leader in the team? When I believe this is the first victory that LAFC has gotten in Minnesota. Yes. So that's pretty big. And they did get to shut out without Aaron Long. I was interested to see how they would come out. And I don't know what you thought of the way they lined up, but it looked 5 in the back to me. And Nkosi Teferi got his first start since April 5th, which was interesting. I think a lot of the weight of this is going to fall on Segura. And I'm just not, I know he's been starting a lot lately, but I'm just not sure that he's up to it. He hasn't played the way he played before he got hurt. I don't think, he missed a year, he came back, and it's time for him to step up, next man up. It's time for him to step up. You mentioned Denis Bouanga. So Bouanga, led MLS in scoring over the last 2 seasons combined, full seasons, not counting this one. He has scored in 3 straight games, all on penalty kicks. He has 11 on the season, 6 on penalty kicks. So more than half his goals on penalty kicks. Okay, and that leads MLS, by the way. His last 4 goals, the last 3 games he scored, but his last 4 goals in MLS overall on penalty kicks. Okay, why is that important? Well, when Olivier Giroud gave his goodbye press conference, one of the things he talked about, and I don't think he was being critical, I think he was just being honest. He said, look, this offense is set up for Denis Bouanga. Everything goes to him. When we get into the attacking end, people are looking for him. The crosses come to him. They play to his side of the field. Okay, fine. That's a good strategy when you have the best scorer in the league. But you know that he leads the league. He's second in the league in shots on goal with 44.
Right.
And he has 11 goals and 5 of them non-penalty kick goals. Okay. So 44 shots and he has 5 goals. He's third in the league in overall shots. Messi leads. He's third in the league in overall shots. And again, 5 goals. I don't know if they're all from the run of play. They could have been on set pieces, I suppose. But that's not the kind of production you want from that guy. I think he's got to get a little bit better now. Lloris is bailing him out, clean sheets, 8 now that he's third in the league with clean sheets, tied for third, 321 scoreless minutes. He's holding that team together, and they're going to need him to play like that without Aaron Long. But, man, they've got to get something going up front because they can't continue to wait for penalty kicks.
Yeah, it's tough with Denis too, right? Because everybody knows it's like Mariano Rivera throwing the cutter. It's going to come every single time. It's going to be Denis Bouanga on that one side. The question is, I guess, for all the LAFC supporters out there is, who would you rather have shooting it, right? Who do you want up on your top 3? Is it Nathan Ordaz? Is it David Martinez? Is it Javier Del Rosa? It's a tough question to ask when Denis is having to shoulder so much of the offensive load.
Yeah, and I'd like to see. I think Nathan Ordaz is a really good player, very creative. And the thing I like about him is he's young. And someone made the point when he scored that goal against Inter Miami in I guess it was in Champions League, then won that game 1-0. It was a goal that he never should have tried, never should have shot from there, never should have even attempted the shot, and he did because he is so young. It's like he's still having fun, and he doesn't know he can't do that, so he does it and he scores. And a lot of the assists he gets are passes that just come out of nowhere. So I really like his creativity. But you're right. I mean, Bouanga's your guy. That's why he's there. That's why he's getting the big bucks. You got to kind of ride him. But I think he has to be a little bit more productive. And by the way, when you speak of they've won 3 in a row, only LAFC and Real Salt Lake now have won 3 in a row in MLS. LAFC struggled in Club World Cup, but they weren't playing, they weren't playing Sporting Kansas City and Portland. So right. you got to kind of set that aside. They've lost 1 of their last 13 in MLS. They're the hottest team in the league right now. They've climbed up to 4th place, which if they stay in 4th, right, top 4 teams get home playoffs. They're 8-2-1 at home, 2-3-4 on the road. Where do you think they want to play in the playoffs?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, points per match, they're up to 3rd right now too, right? So all those matches in hand on those teams above. Today was a true 6-pointer, I think, with Minnesota being in 2nd place. It was a big one for them.
But you mentioned that. You're right. They got 2 games in hand on everybody, 3 on some teams, but they got Leagues Cup coming up. They've got to make up all those games. It's going to be a super crowded schedule down the stretch. And they just lost Aaron Long. I mean, depth is going to be a problem. They have 2 designated player spots that they can spend in the transfer window, and they got a lot of money because they just got $10 million, not all of it for player acquisition, but they did get some money to spend from the club.
Kev, you're on mute right now. Just want to make sure. I know you might be having a quick audio issue.
Muted. How's that? Is that better?
There you go.
Yeah, that's better. Hey, Kevin, you just mentioned it about the depth. And you mentioned a bunch of makeup games that they got to do. LAFC played their first, the Minnesota game was the first of 6 in the next 22 games. You mentioned that Aaron Long's out for the season. And they've only got 1 guy really scoring, right? Nate Ordaz is coming on board, and he's getting some goals. But how is the depth for LAFC, and can they function on the attack with only 1 guy really scoring up front?
Well, the other part about that is you talk about the depth. It's not just the players they have, but or the number of players, but it's the players they have. It's an old team. Most of the guys 29, 30, 31. Lloris is, I don't want to say he went to to high school with Jesus, but Jesus is in his yearbook. I mean, he's an older guy, Mark Delgado, a lot of the guys they rely on, even Bouanga's kind of, not a young spring chicken. So guys like Ordaz and I think Tillman and some of those guys are going to have to step back on the back line. Ryan Hollinshead, Segura is an older player. They're going to have to not only use all their roster, but some of these young guys are going to have to step up and carry some of the load, because we're going into August and September. There's going to be games in Texas and St. Louis and other places with humidity. It's going to be tough. It's not just playing every 3 days, which is hard enough. It's playing every 3 days when it's 85 degrees and 70% humidity. That's really tough. And traveling.
Yeah. And those, we always call them 90 days back in Michigan, when it's 90 degrees and 90% humidity, you can't run in that. And that's going to be tough, especially for some of these older guys.
And we talk about they're getting, John Thornton is going to bring in players. I expect 3 or maybe 4, a couple of them being guys that would make difference makers. Well, even the guys that aren't difference makers and the guys that aren't, you have to integrate them into the team. How can you do that when you're playing every third day? There's no training.
Yeah, you can't do it. And that's the tough part. So let's get into LA Galaxy for a minute. What did you think of the Galaxy performance today? They ended up losing 2-1 to Austin, but let's talk about that just for a couple of minutes.
I think it was probably their worst performance, at least one of their worst performances at home, at least until stoppage time. When they got the penalty kick and stoppage time, showed a little bit of life. I thought Joseph Paintsel had a pretty good game. I thought Gabriel Peck was dangerous, but just couldn't find the net. I mean, he had a couple of shots on target that there was good saves by Stuver, but for the most part, it was like he was shooting blind. I just thought that they were showing some life. They had won 2 in a row. And they were looking like they were beginning to turn a corner. One of the things that Greg Vanney talked about after this first half of the season ended and the Galaxy had, were they winless at 17 or did they just get their first win? In any case, what Greg Vanney said is flush that. We're going to start over. Forget the first half of the season. We're going into the second half of the season. And that looked like a great strategy because they got off to a pretty good start. But they really, really regressed. And so right now they're at 3-14-6. They've got 11 games left. What are they playing for? Well, they're not going to make the playoffs. It would take an amazing run to make the playoffs. There are a couple of milestones out there. The fewest wins the Galaxy have ever had in the season is 8. They've done that 3 times. This team would have to win 5 of their last 11 games just to match that. 18 losses is the most they've had. They're 4 away from that. They could tie that. 32 points. If they continue at the pace they're at right now, they'll finish the season with 22 points. They'll be 10 lower than the lowest point total in franchise history. The season is over pretty much. I mean, we'll talk in a minute. They can win. They can do well in Leagues Cup, and that would be a feather in their cap if they could make a little bit of a run there. They do have Campeones Cup in September. That's a one-off game. They've played well enough in spurts where they might be dangerous in that game. They could win a trophy. The worst season in the modern era in MLS was 2013. DC United won 3 games. They also won the U.S. Open Cup that year. I think that is a possible goal for the Galaxy. But when you look at these other things, fewest wins, most losses, fewest points, they don't want to go from MLS champion to the worst team in franchise history. So I would hope that someone's looking at those numbers and saying, come on, guys, we got to go. We got to catch these numbers.
Yeah, I guess the thought is, and I just want to get you on record here because, you've been covering the Galaxy since basically their inception. Your thoughts on any chance after this match in Austin that they could reel off enough to make the playoffs?
No, they would have to. They would have to now with this loss. I had the math figured out the other day. Going into that game, they had to go something like before the Austin game, something like 9-1-4 or something like that to get the points. So there is no margin for error, and that's assuming that the other teams, the teams above them, don't hit a little bit of a streak. Austin was a team that's right down there in the playoff hunt too. So you talk about Minnesota being a 6-game swing for LAFC. This was a 6-game swing for the Galaxy. They fell behind Austin and Austin moved in front of them. So, right now the Galaxy tied with Montreal for the Wooden Spoon. They both have 15 points, 0.65 points a game. The Galaxy are winless on the road and they're going to BMO to play El Tráfico. And they've allowed the most goals in the league at 45. It's when you look at you can look at the Galaxy on the field and say they played pretty well in spurts and this guy had a good game. When you look at the numbers collectively, what they've done, it's pretty dismal. And They had the lowest attendance of the season tonight. There's the fan boycott is there. I don't know if you saw the game, but there was no noise. The supporters section was empty. It reminds me a lot of 2023 when there was the supporter boycott because of the Chris Klein situation. And that team was individually, when you look at the players, you say, pretty good team. Ricky Poos, Billy Sharp had a good year. They had Tyler Boyd. They had some decent players. And you said, this team should be better. It was a horrible team. It was horrible off the field. It was horrible on the field. This feels a lot like that.
Yeah. And Kevin, let me ask you too, with everything that's going on in Los Angeles, right? Obviously, why the supporters are protesting the way that they are. You really felt it inside the stadium tonight and the last couple of matches. How is this affecting maybe the greater reputation of the Los Angeles Galaxy in Los Angeles and throughout maybe the MLS community?
Well, I think it's hurting in a lot of different ways. And kudos to Angel City, first of all. They were out of the gate first on this whole thing. Granted, they had at the first game, but they came out with the T-shirts, Immigrant City FC. They got those done immediately. They made the statement, and the great thing, I don't know if you guys have seen the Immigrant City shirts. Mm-hmm. The Angel City logo was nowhere there. This wasn't a look at us, look what we're doing. This was, hey, community, we're behind you. And the more I think about that part of it, it's amazing. LAFC made a statement. I don't know that statement is going to, it wasn't the strongest statement in the world, but it was a statement. They did say something. They did say shoulder to shoulder, we're there with you guys. Galaxy haven't done that. And so is this going to hurt their brand going forward? Well, what I would say is 2 years ago, 2023, you had the supporter boycott and they had to force the president out. Supporters did not show up at the match. This is soccer. I've covered a lot of other sports, and I can, if you're a soccer fan only, you may not appreciate this, but this is like no other sport. The way the Dodgers have fans, the Lakers have fans, the Kings have fans, the Galaxy, LAFC, and Angel City have supporters. They are part of the club. They think they're part of the club. They believe they're part of the club. And so when they say they want something done, LAFC tends to listen to their supporters. I've been around some of those meetings. To the Galaxy, this is just kind of a boneheaded, unforced error. I'm sure they have reasons for doing what they're doing, but all they really had to do was come out and say, we see what's going on. We're with you. We want our supporters to be in a safe place, whatever they didn't have to say, let's impeach Trump. That's not what anybody else said. They just have to say, we see you. We appreciate you. We understand this is a difficult time. We're here for you. And they couldn't even muster that. Even the Dodgers wound up doing that eventually.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things that they didn't do that could easily have kind of put this thing to bed versus now it's going on 3-4 weeks now is said anything. We've talked about it on the show a few different times, and it's, had they just put out even a generic statement, kind of like what LAFC did, but they put it out. But if they said, hey, we get it, we understand you, we need your support, especially in this difficult time, something like that, I think this would have all been taken care of weeks ago.
Well, I talked to the league about this because the Galaxy appeared to be, they weren't even being completely honest about why they weren't saying anything. They were giving and they didn't say this, I'm not saying they lied, they just gave the impression that the league didn't want them to say anything. And, San Diego didn't say anything, and they're right at the border. Austin fans made a statement, but no MLS team, with the exception of LAFC that I know of, has said anything. We had Angel City and Chicago in the NWSL, and then LAFC seems to be by itself. Supporters have done things. Austin and Nashville, remember there was a boycott. Supporters have done things in a lot of different cities. The Galaxy tried to sort of hide behind this thing of, well, the league doesn't want us to say anything. I talked to the league and they said that's not true. The league says, look, signage in the stadium cannot call for the dismantling of a government agency. They don't want something to say, screw the LAPD or abolish ICE. That's kind of the ones they're drawing their lines at. The Galaxy didn't have any abolish ICE. They had signs that protected the community, calling for the protection of the community. They had signs against the Galaxy, and the Galaxy got really heavy-handed with those tifos and those signs. Again, read the room, guys. These are not illegal by the league's own statement. The league is okay with this. Let it go. And the fans are angry with you guys. Try to read the room and understand. But instead, no, the Galaxy ran out and said, no, tear those signs down. You're expelled. They expelled fans from the games. And now fans are canceling their tickets, and the Galaxy are going, why? Well, because you expelled them.
Yeah,
Well,
it's going
let's
to be
move on.
really.
Sorry,
it's
there,
hard.
JR.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really interesting to see if any of that manifests itself at BMO Stadium on Saturday, because as we know, this is one of the biggest weeks in Southern California soccer. This is one of the weeks of the Battle of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Derby, or as, of course, the media loves to call it, El Tráfico, the 26th meeting between the two sides. And look, both clubs obviously will feel like they have to win this game. LAFC, they'll be favored at home. And Galaxy, you mentioned having things to play for the rest of the season, right? You have Leagues Cup, you have Campeones Cup, and this, no doubt, is the last regular season game that'll be circled on a lot of their calendars. Are you expecting a typical El Tráfico game where we get 4, 5, 6, 7 goals, lots of attacking? Or what are your predictions on how things are going to go with this version of the Los Angeles Derby?
Well, I got to go back to what you said at the start. Biggest weekend in Southern California soccer? No, not even. Maybe one back in the day. But again, if you look at the numbers, okay, LA Galaxy has won only once in 5 El Tráficos in the last 5. They've won only once. They did lose the game at the Rose Bowl last year, which is interesting in the fact that they did not lose at Dignity Health Sports Park all season. Playoffs, Leagues Cup, everything, more than 20 games. They rolled the dice, won the MLS Cup there. But they didn't go undefeated at home because they lost at the Rose Bowl, and that was technically a home game. But they haven't won in 5 El Tráficos in the regular season at BMO. They haven't won at BMO at all since 2020. They've never won at BMO when there were fans there. When they won in 2020, it wasn't even called BMO. It's called Bank of America Stadium. The stadium has changed names since they won there. They've never won there with fans. So they do lead the series 10-9-6, but they haven't won at BMO where they're going to be playing. They haven't won on the road all season. Yeah, all those things, supposedly you can throw them out in a derby. And when I talk about the derbies, lost some of us luster. Scarf, you remember with Bob Bradley, he would chew nails for breakfast, and it was like, we're playing our rivals and we can't give them anything, and no water, no food. And, it was a blood battle for him. With Steve Cherundolo, you get they're our rivals and we sure like to win this game. It just doesn't feel the same. The Zlatan, the Carlos Vela energy is not there. We don't even have Jovalic, Dejan Jovalic, the LAFC killer. He's gone. Ricky Puig is not in this game. So it's going to be, Marco Royce is going to have to step up, and maybe Gabriel Peck to make a game of this thing. But all that's really left, as you said, the Galaxy are playing for some milestones to avoid being the worst team in the history of histories. And LAFC is playing for the playoffs. The Galaxy could salvage a little bit of their season if they can spoil things for their arch rivals across, down the freeway. But holy cow, when you look at LAFC is the hottest team in the league right now. The Galaxy are tied for the worst team in the league. They just had arguably their worst home performance of the season, and they're coming in to play at BMO against, a loud fan. They haven't had fans and making noise in 2 games now. They're going to be loud fans there. So it's going to be a really difficult environment in a bunch of different ways for the Galaxy.
Yeah, the other interesting thing to think about, too, is if Galaxy are able to pull this one off, LAFC doesn't have a chance to respond until 2026, right? So that's even worse for the fan base, the supporters of LAFC. Look, Denis Bouanga has been excellent, although albeit from the penalty spot quite a bit. Same can be said of Marco Royce, who feels like he's turned back the clock, not the Austin game notwithstanding. In your view, what's the key to controlling those two? What do Galaxy need to do to stop Denis Bouanga? What does LAFC need to do to make it kind of 2 bad games in a row for Marco Royce?
Well, I think what the Galaxy need to do with Bouanga is make sure everyone in an LAFC uniform is standing up at all times in the penalty area, because if somebody goes down, Bouanga's going to the spot, and we know what happens when he does that. Marco Royce, Austin did a really good job of keeping him out of the game. He spent a lot of the night in the middle. He wasn't out on the wings. When he did go out onto the wings to get the ball, he was a little bit more dangerous. But he had, I think, he had a goal contribution at 11 or 12 straight games going back to April. One thing with Marco Royce, and he did not say this, the vibe I got from him when he came in the middle of last season was, I'm 3-time Bundesliga player of the year. I played for Borussia Dortmund. My last game in Europe was the Champions League final. And now I'm playing, Vancouver Whitecaps on a Wednesday afternoon. It's just like, he kind of felt like you got the vibe that MLS was beneath me. And he didn't say that, but it just felt like he was playing in the summer league. This time, maybe because Ricky Puig is gone, or he had the injury problem, remember at the beginning of the season, and he's come back from that. And maybe it was sort of that life flash before his eyes, like, this could be the end. He's come back and he has taken this team and put the team on his shoulders. I think if you're LAFC, I would expect them, to be honest, to come out with a 5-man back line again. I would, they take the wings away. Paintsill has been dangerous, but like Peck, they get a lot of shots, but none of them seem to be all that effective. So you want to prevent them because you don't know, ricochet, anything weird can happen. So I think LAFC's plan would be to sort of guard the wings and then make sure there's a couple of people on Royce in the middle at all times. He's become that distributor that Ricky Puig was.
Yeah. All right. So that kind of answers my next question, because I was going to say LAFC will win on Saturday and you got to take away the wings and take away Marco Royce, right?
Well, yeah, at least one of the wings, because, then you can kind of lean to that side. Seattle did a great job in the playoffs, probably the best job we saw last year. If you remember, the Galaxy had 4 guys with 10 or more goals. It's not going to happen this year. 4 guys with 10 or more goals, and Gabriel Peck was the leader of that, and he was so hot in the start of the playoffs. And Seattle, with one guy, completely took him out of the game, and he was not dangerous after the Seattle game, the rest of the playoffs. So he can be neutralized, and I'm sure LAFC knows all about that, how to do that. But yeah, I think the Galaxy are most dangerous when their wingers have the ball and they're coming in, and it's not so much crosses; it's getting the ball to the wingers on the outside and letting them come in, and that's kind of where Royce comes in. He's been the distributor. So if you can gang up on Royce and just watch the wings and don't allow those guys to cut into a good position. So it's going to be on the outside backs. I think Hollands is going to have a good game. So not so much the center backs, which I guess works for LAFC, right? If you say Aaron Long is the linchpin, it's not so much a center back type of thing. It's defensive midfielder and then your outside backs.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you on that one. And with that, Kevin, we really appreciate you joining us today on Soccer and 60, man. Thanks so much for hanging out with us for a half hour or so. It's really, really appreciated.
I appreciate you guys asking me to come on. So who am I going to see on Saturday?
I'll be there for sure, Kevin. You'll see me around BMO. Absolutely.
Okay, we'll see you then. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Bye-bye.
All right. Once again, that is the LA Times soccer and hockey writer, by the way, Kevin Baxter, covering soccer in the Southland for the last several decades now. Again, a big thank you to Kevin Baxter. It's time to talk some Empire Strykers soccer. And I mean, look, I've got to lead with one of the biggest stories in the Southland for soccer, a free, massive youth camp, the biggest youth soccer camp in Southern California, running across Upland, Fontana, and Rancho Cucamonga from July 28th to August 1st. San Bernardino County 2nd District Supervisor Jesse Armendariz joins Loma Linda University Children's Health, Verizon, and National Corps in putting on this amazing camp, a camp aimed to reach over 2,000 kids ages 4 to 17 to help them grow their skills, build their confidence, and make lasting memories. And oh, by the way, it's all for free. Such a cool thing that the Empire Strykers are doing. And Tim, all you got, by the way, are coaches Marco Fabian, the Mexican legend, the Strykers superstar, the $1 million man Onua Obasi, the Strykers head coach. It looks like we're having Justin Stinson, who's got to be on the Mount Rushmore of all-time great Empire Strykers players, and the miracle man, Jack Downer, the 2-time street ball champion, world street ball icon. The guys rub shoulders with Kylian Mbappe and Neymar. Come on. Those are 4 of your coaches. How incredible is this soccer camp and this coaching lineup for the Empire Strykers?
This is one of the most impressive coaching lineups I've ever seen at any soccer camp ever. To have these 4 guys coming in, Justin Simpson is the Golden Boot runner-up last season. And if you get the chance to meet Justin, he is an incredible dude. We've had him on the show. We had a great interview with him. But I got to hang out with him a couple of weeks ago at a Empire Strykers business mixer. And the guy is just as down to earth as he come. Really wants to be part of this team. He's signed a long-term contract just about a week ago. And for him to go out and be able to coach as many kids as they're going to coach over several days. And again, it's all free. This is just an incredible thing, not only for the community as a whole, but to put the Empire Strikers even on this bigger map here in the Inland Empire. It's just incredible. And to be able to see Jack Downer come in, and if you listen to his story about almost dying, it's unbelievable. And to also come back from multiple ankle injuries, it's just incredible. And then gold medalist Marco Fabian. I mean, come on, get your kids out there. It's going to be an incredible week. And to touch that many kids over this free soccer camp that they're putting on, it's amazing, Scarf. It really, truly is a great deal for the community.
Yeah, and once again, showing the Empire Strikers commitment to that connection with the community. Head on over to empirestrikers.com. You can get all the registration information. And you mentioned it, it's free. No reason not to get out there. If you're 4 to 17, sorry for all those adults out there, you can't rub shoulders with a gold medalist and with a guy who's hung out with Kylian Mbappe before. It's got to be 4 to 17-year-olds, but such an incredible opportunity. One of the biggest soccer camps in the nation happening in the Inland Empire. Once again, July 28th to August 1st. A nice bit of news in Empire Strikers land is re-signing 3 key pieces, some depth pieces, some bigger names that we'll expect to have a bigger part of the attack. But this is, not re-signing, but bringing in 3 key pieces. The first of which is Jose Gonzalez, a reliable depth player, kind of returning to MASL after a 2-year absence, right?
Can you guys hear me?
Oh,
we can now, yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So let's probably do that over.
Okay.
We're just doing a season review for them. We didn't re-sign them. We didn't do anything really. We're just saying like, hey, and with that, let's take a look back real quick. Let's continue our series of, reviews for Empire Strikers players, that kind of thing.
Got it. Understood.
Sounds good.
I'll redo the intro on that.
Perfect. Here we go.
And with that, Tim, we go from looking ahead to a really incredible soccer opportunity in the Southland with that great camp, to looking back on 3 key pieces in the Empire Strikers playoff run last season. We're going to look at a couple of depth players and then maybe a player who they're hoping for a little bit more out of in the coming seasons. The first of which, let's talk about Jose Gonzalez, a reliable depth player, right? Returned to the MASL after a 2-year absence. Most appearances in the MASL since 2017-18, and really a key piece when it comes to squad rotation, especially on the road. I mean, this is a player whose history goes back deep into their Ontario Fury days, if we're allowed to say that name on this podcast. Jose Gonzalez, a great depth piece this last season for the Empire.
Yeah, you mentioned it. He was a great rotation player, played a lot on the road when some of the guys couldn't make the flights or there were some back-to-back games. But he did play in 10 games last season, and he did put one in the back of the net. So having that be part of that last season really made the Strikers make that playoff push and get into it, because this is not something that they had the year before when they just were the bottom of the table and not a chance to make the playoffs. So for him to come in last season and get those 10 games played really made a big difference on the defensive line.
Yeah, rotational depth, especially on the road, so key in the MASL. I mean, we know how deep and how grueling some of these traveling across the country can be to some of these spots. I mean, that LA to Utica flight, that is not an easy flight, that's for sure. Let's talk about Momo Guy. Had a breakout season in 2023, 2024, right? 15 goal contributions. Took a bit of a step back last season, although he was injured for long stretches. No doubt Empire expecting a little bit more this next season from Momo.
Yeah, and Momo is one of these guys where you just want to see him succeed. The previous year he had played in 23 games. He got into 13 last year, but he was still got a goal, got a few assists, and he is a key piece of the Strykers going forward into this year.
Yeah, going to look to bounce back after a tough season. A player who a lot of people are still looking forward to is Harold Hansen, the former Portland Timbers product, right? This is the guy who's had MLS experience, who's had MLS2 experience. He can do it all. Look, 9 assists in his first season with the Strykers, 7 goals in his second season last year, double-digit goal contributions in each of his first 2 seasons. And he's an Ontario native. You know he wants to do it for the Inland Empire. Harold Hansen, a player who I know a lot of people are looking forward to back in the fold for the Empire Strikers.
Yeah, when you get a guy that can come into the lineup that's putting up a point per game, and I know there's a lot more goals in the indoor game than the outdoor game, but anytime you can get a guy that's putting up literally a point every game, it's great for the team. It's great for the offensive prowess that they're going to have again. And when you can put up 5 or 6, 7, 8 goals in a game versus just the 1 or 2, it makes a big difference on the win sheet at the end of the day.
Yeah, you imagine you're Justin Stinson, you're Marco Fabian, and you can actually breathe a little bit when you've got somebody out there, the talent and the likes of Harold Hansen. You know what he can bring to the squad. Maybe it's double-digit goals next year. Maybe it's double-digit assists next year. Maybe it's both. We do remember his incredible bicycle kick goal a couple of seasons ago. Again, and an Ontario native who's represented the U.S. on several youth levels. I mean, being able to have that U.S., that flag across the front of your chest, it's got to be the coolest feeling in the world. And especially when you can do it in front of your home crowd, the Ontario native Harold Hansen. We're going to get into Tim's, I don't know, is it safe to say, right? Still your favorite part of the show, even though it's a little bit of a rough go this last week for Orange County Soccer Club, right? After posting, 3 straight shutouts, OCSC looked to keep their stingy defensive ways going as they traveled out to Cardinal Stadium to take on Monterey Bay FC. But Timmy K, it was not meant to be in Monterey Bay. They equalized after falling down a goal, but gave it right back, and that wasn't even the worst news of the match.
No, there was a couple of things that went on this match, Scarf, and Monterey Bay has always been a tough place to play for the entire league, much less Orange County. They have not played well up in Monterey. And one of the things that happened this weekend was Liam McKinnon did get an injury, and it was announced yesterday, Wednesday, that that Liam will be out for the rest of the season. He suffered a serious injury. They didn't elaborate on it. But Liam, who is one of their, he was a big signing this offseason. He came in, he's played well for the team. He's out for the season. So this is going to leave a big hole inside of the Orange County offense. The other thing, welcome to USL Championship Soccer's Stephen Kelly. He takes a red card. And we talked about when you lift up your elbows on a defender coming in. It's a somewhat lazy play. And really what it was a retaliation play, because Monterey Bay and every other team in the league has figured out how to play Orange County. And you run into them, you smack them, you trip them, you crash into them. And I'm not going to totally smack on the referees too badly, but I tell you what, we talked about it last week. We talked about it about 3 or 4 weeks ago. The USL referees have to take control of a game. And this was a game that they did not take control of, because there could have easily been 2-3 red cards in this match. The Monterey Bay team was hammering. They were hammering Ousmane Silla multiple times. They were hammering Nico Ben Alcazar. And the way that the teams are doing this, they're getting under their skin. And unfortunately for Orange County, they just don't have the bulk some of these other teams have, Scarf. And this is what's happening when you get down a goal. They then come back and equalize. They go down a goal again. And then Monterey Bay is an expert at wasting time. And again, this is one of these things that the referees have started to do in the upper divisions, is start handing out yellow cards. If you're sitting around 8-10 seconds, they'll start, blowing the whistle and things like that. But until they really get a good solution to this, The referee's got to have a command presence, Scarf, and just start handing yellow cards out like they're candy bars.
Yeah, you wonder about the former Rangers product, Stephen Kelly. He has played just over 100 minutes so far in an Orange County uniform. Picked up a yellow in the first match, picked up a straight red here in the second match. Maybe used to playing more of a Rangers style of football, a little more hot-headed. I don't know. I don't watch a ton of the Scottish Premiership, but I've definitely can pick up on Stephen Kelly. I mean, is this a player? We've only seen him for 100 minutes or so, but is this a player who can kind of conduct himself so that he can stay on the pitch in USL Championship? I mean, the kid's born in Glasgow. We know he's got some fire, but the 25-year-old needs to kind of figure it out here in Orange County.
Yeah, he really does, because he's coming into a system and he's not used to. He's coming in mid-season, and that's a challenge. And again, the Scottish Premiership, while it may not be, the Premier League coming out of England, it's a decent league, or at least Rangers is the best team in that league for the, most of the time. But he's going to have to control that Scottish attitude when he comes in to Orange County. And again, this was a lazy foul. He was angry at Monterey Bay, and he took the guy out with an elbow. And I got to give the referee a little bit of credit, because he did go straight red, but the referee also could have gone straight red on at least one other occasion. And what you have to do is, just like when you are playing the team in front of you, you've got to play against the referees too sometimes, and you got to keep your head about you. And hopefully when they come home for the first time in forever, except for a Jägermeister Cup this weekend against Las Vegas, is that they're going to have to keep their head here, because these other teams have got the book on Orange County. They really do. They come in and say, all right, we're going to smack you around a little bit. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to do something stupid, and we're going to win 2-0. And I thought that during the run where they had 3 straight clean sheets, I thought they really kept their head about themselves a lot, Scarf.
Yeah, and our apologies to all the Celtic fans out there for sure. I know it's not just Rangers in the Scottish Premiership. I'm also a fan of Hearts of Midlothian, if you have any time to look them up out there. Real quick, we got about a minute. Looking ahead at their next few matches, and oh, by the way, what does Orange County need to do to get themselves back into the playoff picture, as they have now fallen below that playoff line? What do they need to do in these next couple matches?
Well, the first step is they got to play really well against Las Vegas. They've got to get Nico Benalcazar the ball a little bit more. They've got to get Ethan Zubak more involved. Monterey Bay did a nice job of taking him out for the most part. He did, have a couple of shots on goal, but what they really need to do is they need to get the ball to the wingers, and I think they need to put Mohamedou War in there a little bit more and get him running down, because that speed, speed kills, right? And I think if you put in War, who is clearly the fastest guy on your team, that these are the types of things you got to do. And this game this weekend sold out, so there might be a couple of tickets left inside the Ultra Beer Zone, Michelob Ultra Goal Zone, or in Gnarlyville. But every other seat in the stands is sold out, and I'll be there, Scarf. Me and my wife are gonna be there watching the game on Saturday night.
I love it. It's going to be a great atmosphere down there at Great Park. That being said, though, let's get into our favorite segment, the best 11 players for soccer in the Southland this week. Remember, this is for the week from July 10th to July 16th, which is unfortunately why we don't see a ton of players from Orange County Soccer Club, even in the Super Subs. This was a rough one for OCSC, but Tim, why don't you take us through our starting 11 here in the best 11?
Yeah, so let's start off with the goalkeeper. It's got to be Hugo Lloris of LAFC for the game against Minnesota. And then for the defenders, all from the Galaxy, you're looking at for Julian Aude, you've got Amiro Garces, you got Mickey Yamane. Those were all against DC. And then you have Sergi Palencia against Dallas. And then you got Eddie Segura. Both of those guys are from LAFC against both Dallas and Minnesota. And then you go into the midfielders. It's got to be Marco Reus for the Galaxy against DC. Diego Fagundes also against DC. And then you got Ryan Hollingshead that Kevin was talking about glowingly again against Minnesota. And then you do have Joseph Paintsil for the Galaxy against DC and Austin. And then you've got the only guy scoring for LAFC, Denis Bouanga, for his last couple of matches. So I think it's a pretty good list, Scarf. What do you think?
Yeah, look, you could pencil in Denis Bouanga every best
game.
11 as far as I'm concerned. I do have one gripe. I would have loved to have seen Nkosi Tafari. He is down there at the bottom in very fine print in super subs for his performance against Minnesota. I know he might not have had the eye-popping numbers, but being able to come in and fill the shoes as best he could of Captain Aaron Long, who obviously is out for the remainder of the season with that, his second Achilles injury of his career. I mean, just prayers up for LAFC's captain, Aaron Long. But I would have really liked to have seen Nkosi Tafari make that best 11, starting 11, somewhere there on the back line, especially because it is a 5-3-2. LAFC went to a 5-2-3 this last match. And I think we might, as Kevin Baxter alluded to, we might see that same 5-2-3 or 3-5-2 as it morphs in throughout the game lineup against the Galaxy on Saturday. So I would have loved to have seen Nkosi Tafari. I've got to ask you about your OCSC. Anybody, I know down on the fine print, there's Ousmane Sylla, but is there anybody who you thought maybe should be on this list, at least in the super subs category, that didn't make it?
Well, I got to go to our friend of the show and guest from about a month or so ago is Nico Ben Alcazar. Since he's really started to pick up the pace in the last 5-6 games, he's been starting the past 5-6 games. He has really come into his own with the team, and I think he's the stalwart in that middle of the field. He plays midfielder, he plays defense, and I think he's a much stronger midfielder than he is that back right defender, because when he's playing the back right, the guy's got to collapse down a little bit because he may not be as quick. But he's got the field sense to be a really strong contributor through that midfield. And some of the passes that he's putting on people, on Ethan this weekend and things like that, it's really strong for Nico Ben Alcazar. So I'd put him on the list.
And look, before we go out, just have to ask whether it's our creative director, Gunnar, or Nina K, no relation, that makes the best 11 graphic. How long has Ryan Hollingshead been a midfielder? Just asking, just saying. He plays more of a left or a right back. But either way, look, Tim, this has been another spectacular Soccer in 60. I mean, we were joined by soccer royalty in the Southland, Kevin Baxter of the Los Angeles Times, who stayed with us for not one, not two, but 3 fantastic segments discussing all things Angel City, LAFC, and the Galaxy. Again, this is the fastest paced soccer podcast in SoCal. And on behalf of my co-host, Timmy K, Tim Kolach, I'm your friendly neighborhood scarf, J.R. Liebert, and this has been Soccer.